Welcome to the Global Marketing Show, where we explore how language and culture impact global business. I'm Wendy Pease, your host and president of Rapport International. Let's get started. Hi, listeners, to another episode of the Global Marketing Show. I'm really glad that you joined us today. And before we get started and I introduce our guest, I would like to remind you that the podcast is brought to you by Rapport International. And we do have a tidbit today, and it is about South America. And Brazilians don't consider themselves to be Hispanics, and they resent being spoken to in Spanish. And so if you're doing Brazil in South America, and particularly in Brazil, make sure you're speaking or understand or have your marketing materials translated into Brazilian Portuguese, not Spanish or European Portuguese. So thanks so much for Rapport International, the company who connects you across 200 languages with written translation, spoken interpretation. Now on to our guest. We are welcoming Justin Seibert. He is the founder of DOM, an international digital marketing agency that he founded in 2006, and he hasn't looked back. In addition to export marketing services, DOM specializes in growing AI search visibility for his clients in ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Claude. So Justin, welcome.
Thanks, Wendy. Super happy to be here and speaking with you today.
Yeah, I have really been looking forward to talking to you because the number one export from the United States is services. And you have a services company and you export. So first, why don't you tell us about DOM, what you do, and then we'll get into what you're doing internationally.
Yeah, thank you. So, high level, what we do is we drive quality traffic to our clients' websites, and we help them convert that traffic into leads and sales, whatever it is that they can measure that has a meaningful impact for their business. More specifically, traditionally we started with search engine marketing. So how do we get our clients to show up in either things like Google Ads or search engine optimization and those organic listings within Google? But search was a big part of what we did. We added on social media and other forms of digital advertising and marketing, and then being able to analyze all of it through Google Analytics and other measures of really getting some strong data analysis to make smarter marketing decisions. So that's what we've done traditionally. And then, as you mentioned at the top, I think all of your listeners are getting used to at least all of the changes that AI seems to be throwing at us daily. And so we worked really hard for about a year at how could we influence the results when people put in prompts or searches into ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Copilot. We got to the point last year where we started to see some success from our efforts that we could measure. And so we launched that as a separate service. I'm going to do my best not to use a lot of jargon. The industry has not even settled on a particular name for this yet, but it appears that the most popular name and what we're calling it is Generative Engine Optimization, or GEO. So if you hear me say GEO today, all I mean is how do we get our clients, or how does somebody get themselves to show up when people are doing searches in those AI engines like ChatGPT?
Excellent. We are going to deep dive into that later on in the episode, but I do want to start out with, so you provide marketing services and you've worked in a couple dozen countries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started off by working with our clients in the US and helping them export. And then kind of two things happened. One was, well, if we're helping our clients export, and originally we were just helping product exporters, to your point, is that's what everybody thinks of for exporting, even though that's not the number one service area for the United States. So we said, if we're doing that for our clients, shouldn't we be doing that for ourselves? And then the other thing that happened around the same time was we were getting leads through our website from people in different countries. So yes, we have worked directly with clients from 30 different countries across all 6 continents. I'm still looking to find some penguins from Antarctica that can purchase from me.
You and every other international business person.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, we've been fortunate to work with companies in all those different countries and help them sell to over 150 countries around the world.
Were you trying to attract those companies to work with you, or did they just come in?
In the very early goings, they just came in. We were, of course, as a digital marketing agency, we were optimizing our website for the general internet, but we were focused primarily on what prospects or who could become clients in the United States. But what you're doing for your website, while there are certain things that you need to do additionally or separately to attract people from other countries, a lot of what you're doing, a lot of that base building that you're doing, even here in the United States or in your home country, will help you get that visibility globally. So it was through that we started to get some inquiries through our website that, to your point, were not things that we were targeting on our own. And then once we started to have success, then we started to do some different things specifically to target foreign companies.
Take me through that. What were you focusing on? What were your key prospects? And then can you give an example of one of the companies that reached out to you and how you worked with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the beginning, we were just trying to make sure that we were showing up when people were searching about how they could be found on the internet. So if they were looking for SEO agencies or somebody to help them run Google Ads, for example, we wanted to make sure that we were appearing in those cases. And our agency is agnostic to industry, so we weren't looking for a specific industry, although there's, like probably most companies, there are industries we work in more than others. At least the first one that I can remember was a company out of Australia, and they made a certain type of kind of a canvas print for photos. And they were looking to sell. And where a lot of our clients have come from is they're not necessarily trying to expand business in their own countries. They're looking to expand outside of their countries. And we can talk more about that. But it was a company that was looking to export outside of Australia, outside of Oceania. That was, I think, our very first foreign client.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so were they trying to come into the US and then they said, here's a good marketing agency for the US, or did you work with them on multiple countries?
Our primary focus for them was the United States, but just like I mentioned that there are certain base things that we did for ourselves that helped us get that global attention, same thing for them. So there were certain things that we were doing, even though we were focused on the United States, there were certain things we were doing to improve their website that would help them in multiple markets, including Australia and other countries, primarily for English speaking countries, or at least English speakers in other countries.
So you did mention that you've worked with clients in 30 different countries and 150 countries around the world. Can you give us like an example of a company that may not have been focused primarily on English speaking countries?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are clients that we work with where we're not even necessarily focused on English as a language at all, where it's just in their own countries. So one example would be a company that had a series of hair restoration clinics in Europe. And so we ran no English campaigns. I mean, I think we technically maybe were putting the English content up on one of their websites just because we were already writing it in English to start with. But we were really focused on French campaigns in France, German campaigns in Germany, Italian campaigns in Italy, and Greek campaigns in Greece for them. So that would be an example of those companies. Hong Kong University was only focused on Hong Kong. A Mexican grocery chain only focused in Mexico. So again, we will work with those types of companies. Currently, we're working with a series of medical clinics in Georgia. But again, what's more typical is when they say, hey, we want to go international, whether that's all across the globe or specifically picking out certain countries outside of their own market.
I mean, so many questions there. Let's go back to the hair restoration first. So you would write the content in English, and then I assume you were translating into French, German, Italian, and Greek?
Correct. So and what we'll do depends on who we're working with. So sometimes a client might have the bandwidth and all the capabilities and want to, kind of save on price, and they can do the translation professionally and localize it themselves. And we'll do that because we always, as I'm sure you will appreciate and understand, we always want to make sure it's professionally translated and localized to the particular country. In this case, we were working with a translation service that was doing that for us.
You said that you wanted it professional and localized. Why wouldn't somebody use AI translation or Google Translate to do hair restoration marketing?
So when we first started working with them, it was, gosh, I don't know, it was pre-pandemic. So it was a little while ago when we first began. And if anybody remembers what Google Translate was like at that point, it was kind of good enough, maybe if you were an e-commerce website and somebody is just looking for the price point and a SKU number and a picture, and they weren't really caring about what they're reading. And we can have debates about, I think they still should have professional translation, but at least you could get away with that. For everybody else where reading's actually important, the quality just wasn't high enough. And if you would ever run it by a a native speaker, they would very quickly point out the mistakes and just where it didn't even make sense, even if you were looking past grammar types of issues. And so even today, we're not seeing that same quality. The tools have gotten better, and there's certain tools that are better for some countries than others. But I don't think that if language really matters to you in your marketing materials, which typically it does, I think not having that professional eye on it's a mistake.
Oh, I agree with you completely. I mean, I love it for vacation, but if you're trying to do marketing, it really you gotta connect with the people who are trying to buy from you. So that makes sense. So let me jump back into after the hair restoration, you mentioned that you're working with a Hong Kong company that's marketing in Hong Kong and Mexico, grocery store in Mexico. How did that come about? Like, why didn't they use a local company? And why did they come to an American company, to your company, Dom, do marketing?
Your first question is primarily the reason that we don't do, like, our largest international business is not about marketing in that particular country, because there is going to be a local agency that understands the language and the culture and all of those types of things that, in most cases, not all, but most cases, is going to be less expensive, sometimes considerably less expensive than what we're offering. And even if we don't think they're as great as we are, they're probably good enough that they can get by, and with those other benefits can do okay. In these cases, these were companies that had worked with their own domestic agencies and had not been satisfied with the results. In particular, were very let down by strategy. They were let down on actual numbers and having a focus on numbers and what they can do to improve bottom line results versus just saying that we're getting you more clicks or impressions. So it was after trying those agencies without luck that they decided they wanted to go to the US, where I think generally we have a pretty decent reputation for marketing.
I was wondering if you were gonna say that. But I've heard other countries, both, the US is good with marketing or that they're full of flattery and extra words and, they're more exaggerated is the word that I'm looking for. So talk to me about the reputation that you've heard about marketing in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I remember after going to Trade Winds in Istanbul in 2024, meeting a company there. It was a global company, and then they had partners in all across the world. And so they hooked us up with one of their, not franchises, but almost like a franchise type situation with that company that was out of Belgium. And that was kind of the first thing they said was, we Americans know how to market. Much more so than the Europeans do. So they were bought in, and it became much more about why us as an American agency versus why an American agency instead of a local agency. So it depends on who we are. Yes, we are. I use the word awesome a lot. I get really excited about things. So yes, that can be a little different than what people are used to in their own markets. But my experience is, generally speaking, they think pretty highly of that. Now, again, if it were a Russian company marketing in Russia, I don't know that our style would be a great fit for that for some of the reasons that you mentioned. But if they were looking to market to the United States, then I think we have a really strong value proposition to add.
So, what about the clients that are going cross borders to multiple places? Do you have a time when you had something that culturally was very different? So, you had to localize for that market to make sure that the message worked?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a pretty common phenomenon in Latin America in particular, where the wording is different. And there's also cultural differences among the different countries, but primarily on the wording. I think the thing that, Wendy, you'd be more familiar with than me even would be, I had this conversation last week. No. I don't want Puerto Rican Spanish. I want Mexican Spanish for the conversation and frankly for some of those cultural aspects. So I do think it's really important to know what you're walking into and how you need to change it up for the markets. Now, sometimes a company doesn't have the time or can't afford to do the true cultural immersion in each different market, in which case you kind of do the best general issue or general campaign that you can, and then you just flow your dollars to where you're having the best results. And then maybe over time you can start doing a more a deeper cultural dive on individual markets.
There's so many different ways that you can handle that. I mean, I see companies that will go off to their local people and they'll have their translations done in 10 different Spanishes and German, French, Italian, whatever. And then what happens is they end up with a very fragmented marketing message globally that doesn't align, and you've lost that power of the mass of marketing. And so I think it's better to get one good Spanish translation, and then you can have somebody in the market do an edit on it.
True.
But then it comes back to the translation to provider to keep the different versions and help the marketing person figure out where that goes and if there really needs to be one. Like if you look at a TripAdvisor, one good global Spanish can work for them for what they want. But I talked to somebody else who provided birth control for animals, and people's views about animals
Mm,
around the world are so different.
mhm.
You've got some countries that want to protect animals and birth control would be good. And you've got other countries that say, oh, if there's too many, we'll just kill them. And it's a not issue. So how you get that marketing message is important. But the process and the efficiencies in marketing, a good agency can help you with that to make sure you're doing the localization that you need from the start.
Totally agree. Great point. And I think that's where the persona work can come in and really help out as well. What you made me think of with your last comment was I sit on a park commission where we had a real true problem with overpopulation of deer. And we had people here that felt very strongly in a lot of directions about how to handle that, whether it would be birth control, whether it would be calling the deer, whether it would be natural attrition or whatnot. But among the challenges was anybody that could look at it could go, well, these deer aren't healthy. They're scrawny, they're diseased. It's not a good situation for the deer. So what's the way that we need to do that and address that? And so that's even just within one community, not even one country or multiple countries, of having people with very strong different opinions about it. So I think you're spot on that it's really about building those personas and then developing messaging to each of them.
We talked a little bit about AI, and you said at the beginning the GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. Talk to me about more about that, like in general in English, but then how you're handling this across languages and borders.
Let me start with why it's important. I've been doing digital marketing for 25 years now. So I'm an old man. I have lots of gray hair. And I fell in love with digital marketing because it was measurable and you could see intent. So people were searching for something, and then if your ad showed up or your website showed up for what they were searching for, it was a really high conversion rate. So you weren't trying to advertise to the masses, you're trying to get to very specific niche audiences. And what we're seeing now with ChatGPT is that the conversion rates, that intent, is higher than any source I've ever seen because people, when they use their ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever the one that they like to use is, they really view it as their trusted partner or friend or advisor, and they're having full-on conversations with that AI agent so that they already have their mind made up or have at least shortlisted who they want to buy from before they come to the website. So it's not about the amount of traffic you're getting at all as a business. It's about getting better buyers who are coming in pre-educated and ready to make a decision.
Wow. So how do you get your company listed in there?
So the great news is that if you already have a site that is well optimized for search, so if we think of search engine optimization or SEO, about 2/3 of what you're doing right now will help you in GEO as well. So you've built yourself a decent base. But beyond that,
Mhm.
you need to also make sure that you are have a great reputation, right? Because the first step is making sure that you're showing up in those results when people are searching. But what are they saying about you?
Mhm.
So the more that you can have great reviews about your website, the more that you can have solid press, good media coverage, all those are going to build up your reputation in a way that ChatGPT, and again, I use ChatGPT just as shortcut for all the different AI engines, even though they have their different things they look at. Those are all things that ChatGPT can process and say, yes, this is a reputable source that we will actually recommend you when we're putting your information up. So that would be one, is really, really looking at your reputation. The second biggest thing is that the keywords, the prompts that people are searching are different in many cases than what they searched for traditionally in Google. And people are looking for the best, the most reliable, the fastest, the cheapest, the best service, the highest rated. They're looking for superlatives. So making sure that you're talking about your services or products on your website with those superlatives is really, really important. And I know that can make all the lawyers out there a little bit nervous. So it's thinking about ways you can say it in a true and legally comfortable way. So, for example, many of our clients say we are the best. We are top rated by many of the review sites that are out there. Finding those ways to talk in your content can really give you a nice boost for GEO.
Wow, we're all gonna start sounding the same, huh? We're the best, we're the best, we're the best. And how does that transfer over into cultures or across languages?
Well, the first thing you need to look at, I remember I think our very first GEO client that we worked with was a multinational corporation. And a lot of the efforts that we were doing, and keep in mind, AI changes so dang fast that there are things that we're going to do today that are going to look differently next week and next month and next year. So I'm talking about what's currently impactful and what's working. But they were multinational. And what we found was they were doing really great in the United States and the United Kingdom and just generally globally for English type searches from a reputation standpoint. They had some more questions about them in one particular European market. And so our approach had to look different in that market than it did in some other locations where they already had a pristine long track record of high reputation and success. And so in that newer market where they weren't as well known and it wasn't kind of that 5 out of 5 star reputation, we had to approach it a little bit differently about how they could build that up. And what I always recommend for companies is the best way you can do that is by addressing things. So if it's really you're doing well and maybe you just have a couple disgruntled customers, just making sure you're responding to those. If it's something, sometimes you need to look at your business. And I'm not saying that for this particular client, but you might have to say something's we're not doing as well as we could. So what do we need to fix operationally here so that we can have that better reputation? And that makes everything in your business stronger and all of your marketing and sales efforts stronger. So it's sometimes that hard look in the mirror that people don't want to do, but it's the thing that can have the biggest impact for you over the long term.
It's really interesting because I see it particularly in German marketing, where they would tend not to say we're the best, we're awesome, we're, the highest service, because they find that very braggadocio. How do you work with people that are more reserved in how they're going to talk about themselves and are more apt to talk about the features and the high quality and the results that you're going to get?
It's a battle. I mean, we never get 100% of what we want to do. If those cases where we absolutely 100% can't do it, are there ways that we can talk about those things offsite, whether it's through a press release or through reviews other places, encourage a reviews campaign where people can leave those reviews. So there's other things we can do where that type of language isn't being used, but we are encouraging our clients whenever possible to consider how they can do that in a way that meets their business or cultural needs while at the same time get their information out there. Because if you're creative enough for marketing, it doesn't have to come across as braggadocious. It can come across as we're confident in what we're talking about. And this is, again, this is the reason so many people say that we're the best at this particular thing or why we have top ratings. There's a lot of different ways you can get that message across that if you're a good writer, that doesn't come across as that American brash style in your face.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. All right, jumping over to stories with more emotions on them. What has been the biggest fears that you've confronted with clients on crossing borders?
So our headquarter, our biggest office where everybody works out of is in Pittsburgh. We still have an office and we were founded in Wheeling, West Virginia. And what one of my fellow West Virginian exporters will say sometimes is that, and I don't mean to this pick on my state because I love my state very much. And I think it's true in a lot of states, exporting can seem so scary. Like, where do I start to so many companies that sometimes exporting to a West Virginia company means, oh, I sold to a company in Ohio. And it's really about how do you get that comfort level? And we're big fans, as I think you are as well, Wendy, of the U.S. Commercial Service. We're big fans of district export councils. There's a lot of really great free resources of people that want to help you to help strengthen the U.S. economy by exporting more that can help educate you. Because that's how you get over fears, right? Is by getting educated and then doing it.
Ah, the old knowledge is power, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And how about a big mistake that you've seen?
I'm just going through the Rolodex in my head of all the mistakes that I've made. I'll tell you a really impactful one that I hear more often than I would expect to are companies not doing due diligence on distributors or partners and immediately jumping into an exclusive deal in a market or multiple markets, or less hurtful, but maybe it's a distributor or partner that works really well in one market for you, and then they want more markets and they don't have that same capability in other markets. So I've heard even really things where they found out after the fact that it was really a distributor acquiring you to freeze you out for one of your competitors. So they purposely were not selling you so that you were locked down in that particular market. So I think getting a comfort level, not starting off with exclusivity. And it's not to say distributors and partners can't be great. We have an amazing partner in Georgia, for example. But I think it's don't jump in until you already have that trust set up and you've set up a relationship that works for all sides.
Great advice. Any suggestions on how people can do due diligence on partners?
Number one, I definitely would check with the U.S. Commercial Service if you can get any kind of background information that, they're reputable and what information they can find. They can do those company checks for you. Just like I deal with my partners in the United States, always like to just try one thing out to see how everybody plays in the sandbox together. And if it works out and it's a great situation, then you can expand and do more. But I don't like jumping in and putting a ring on anybody's finger until we figure it out if we play well together.
Yes, excellent advice. And I think the other thing that I've heard is that you've got to go over and meet them face to face.
Yes,
You can't do it all virtually.
100%.
Yeah. You know, this question is coming because I always like to ask it. What's your favorite foreign word?
Schadenfreude. So the German word for taking pleasure in other people's misery. And I'd like to think I've matured enough where I don't experience the highs of Schadenfreude as much as I did when I was younger. But there are certain people that it's just delicious when something doesn't happen, and I can't. I probably can't leave that part of myself for forever.
That is a good one. That is a good one. And I was just talking to somebody earlier today about how many good German words there are for these emotions we don't know we have. So I will definitely add that one to the list. Well, Justin, this has been fantastic speaking with you. If people want to reach out to you or learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. So, first place, if you want to find more about the agency and what we offer, is just our website. So, directom.com. So, the word direct, O is an online, M is in marketing, directom.com. And then, if people just want to connect with me personally, the best place is LinkedIn. And what I would just ask is say, hey, you heard me on Wendy's show. And so I just know that it's not spam and why you're connecting. And I would love to connect, and hopefully we can both learn from each other on LinkedIn.
That's great. And to find him on LinkedIn, it's Justin Seibert, and it's spelled Justin, Justin. And then Seibert is spelled Seibert. Justin, thank you so much. Do you have any last words of advice you'd like to leave us with?
I just think and this is a general statement for marketing overall, people still aren't sure with AI visibility. And is it something that, if you're thinking about your marketing, is it brand new? Is it an extension of SEO? There's different ways you want to look at it. But if you are not doing it today, you want to plan for doing it soon, because it's going to become probably the dominant form of intent marketing. And I think it's going to happen over the course of the next year, certainly within the next 2 years. So I would say just planning for how you can show up. And that's not a pitch for my agency. That's just a general statement, whether you do it in-house, you do it with another agency, you hire a contractor, whether you do it with us. I just think it's that important.
I think that's fantastic advice. I know our marketing person, Michelle, has been working on that a lot and doing a lot of research. So I may have to talk to you offline about how we measure or actually know if it's working. So that could be a follow-up call. Well, thank you so much, Justin. And thank you, listeners, for joining us here today. Just a reminder, if you like this episode, give us a 5-star, and certainly forward this episode on to anybody that wants to know more about cross-border marketing or GEO. And definitely contact our sponsor, Rapport International, if you want to explore AI in translation. So, au revoir. That's it for now. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Global Marketing Show. We started this podcast to capture the stories of people who do global marketing and work for companies that export, since those companies have higher revenues, higher profits, higher valuations, higher salaries, and more stability, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And if you know somebody who would be a good guest, introduce them to me, your host, Wendy MacKenzie Pease. If you'd like to learn more about global marketing or language translation and interpretation, visit Rapport International's Resource Center at www.rapporttranslations.com. Au revoir. Hasta luego. Ciao for now.